Welcome to Fascinating Facts. If you're fascinated by the tragic yet captivating story of the Titanic, you've come to the right place. Join us on a journey as we dive deep into the history, mysteries and incredible facts surrounding this iconic ship. Let's jump in and talk about 20 unknown Titanic facts. Number 1. Titanic comes fifth. Many people believe that the worst maritime disaster in 20th century is Titanic, but it's not. In terms of death, it comes only fifth in the list. Wilhelm Gustloff, the German passenger ship, was sunk by a Soviet submarine in the Baltic Sea during World War II. It is estimated that over 9,000 people lost their lives in the tragedy, making it one of the deadliest maritime disaster in history. MV Doña Paz, Philippines. This ferry collided with an oil tanker of Philippines, resulting in a massive fire and loss of an estimated 4,400 lives. MV Salem Express, Egypt. The biggest maritime disaster in Egypt's history is the sinking of ferry MV Al Salam on 3 February of 2006. Around 1,600 people died. Ferry Neptune, Haiti. The ferry Neptune disaster in Haiti was a tragic event that occurred when the Neptune, an overcrowded passenger ferry, capsized off the coast of Haiti. Due to overcrowding and poor maintenance, it was unable to withstand the rough sea. As a result, the ferry capsized, leading to the loss of 1,600 lives. Titanic. If we take in ship disasters with high casualty counts, Titanic comes fifth with the loss around 1,500 lives. Number 2. Tragedy started even before its maiden voyage. During the construction of Titanic, 8 workers were killed and 28 seriously injured. On the day of the Titanic grand launch, a chilling incident occurred. Many people gathered there to watch the big vessel slide onto the River Logan. A 43-year-old shipwright named James Dobbin was crushed by a timber support struck. Number 3. Why Titanic life jackets couldn't save lives. There are more than 3,500 life jackets on the Titanic. Because the maximum passenger capacity of Titanic is 3,500, all of the passengers get life jackets. The problem wasn't that they drowned, the water was a few degrees above freezing once in it. Hypothermia would rapidly set in. As their bodies caught heat, the cold killed them. Number 4. What happened to the bodies? After Titanic sank, the bodies of the victims were scattered in North Atlantic Ocean. More than 1,000 bodies never recovered due to the extreme depth and harsh conditions of the ocean. 316 bodies recovered by cable repair ship CS Mackay Bennett. 200 brought into port. 116 bodies buried at sea. The sad thing was the body of Captain Edward Smith never recovered. In recent years, there have been expeditions to the Titanic wreck sites, and some human remains have been discovered, but they are left undistributed out of respect for the deceased. Number 5. Predicted. In 1898, just 14 years before the disaster, a novel published as Futility by Morgan Robertson later changed its name as Wreck of Titan after the disaster. Although the book is work of fiction, there are several similarities with the actual Titanic disaster. Some are follows. Name and size. In the book, the ship named Titan and is described as unsinkable. It is very similar to Titanic, which also considered unsinkable. Both the length of the ships are similar. Titan 880 feet and Titanic 800 feet. Iceberg. Both ships meet their fate by colliding with the iceberg in North Atlantic Ocean. April month. Both ships met their unfortunate fates in the month of April. The Titanic sank on April 15, 1912, while the Titan also sank April 15. Insufficient lifeboats. In both the book and real disaster, there was not enough lifeboats to accommodate all passengers and crew on board. Titanic had a total 20 lifeboats. In novel, the fictional ship carried 24 lifeboats. Please make sure you've subscribed to our channel. Number 6. Whiskey saved a life. Alcohol consumption is injurious to health, but in some cases. Charles John was 33-year-old at the time of Titanic disaster. He was the chief baker aboard the Titanic and is known for his remarkable survival story, having spent hours in the freezing water of North Atlantic being rescued. When the collision happened, Charles knew that he, as a member of crew, would not be given a place in a lifeboat. As the ship began to sinking, he decided to drink himself into oblivion. He entered into the cabin and finished 2 bottles of whiskey. With the energy of whiskey, he helped people to enter lifeboats. Then he threw overboard some deck chairs along with other seats and cushions, in the hope that people in the water might be able to use them as rafts. It was not long before he too found himself in freezing ocean. At first, he swam towards a lifeboat, but he was pushed off because it was already filled. Then he found a piece of wreckage and hung there for 4 hours before he was rescued by RMS Carpathia, which arrived at 4 a.m. Most passengers and crew members who fell into the water had died of hypothermia within 15 minutes. John believed that his extraordinary survival was due to the vast quantity of whiskey he consumed. Because alcohol consumption can create a warming sensation in the body due to its vasodilatory properties, when consumed it can cause blood vessels near the skin to dilate, which may create a temporary feeling of warmth. It also helped him to reduce Delling's sensation of cold and discomfort. Some sources suggest that alcohol can increase buoyancy in water. Number 7. Two ships, one destiny. We all know that RMS Carpathia played a crucial role in the rescue of approximately 700 survivors from the sinking of Titanic on April 15, 1912. The rapid response and heroic efforts of the crew members of Carpathia are widely recognized, but the fate of Carpathia is a tragic one. Like Titanic, during the World War I, it was torpedoed and sunk by a German submarine in 1918. 5 people lost their lives. The resting sites of Titanic and Carpathia are located relatively close to each other on the North Atlantic Ocean. The distance between the two wreck sites is about 189 miles. Number 8. Want to see Titanic wreckage? After 73 years, the final resting place of Titanic was located in 1985. Since then, around 250 people have personally viewed the Titanic wreckage under the sea. Visiting Titanic wreckage is one of the popular and also a dangerous expedition in the world. And one more thing, it's very costly. Only millionaire can afford. The OceanGate Titanic expedition costs around $250,000 per person. Unfortunately, on June 2023, 5 passengers were killed during the expedition to Titanic wreck. The submersible name was Titan. Yes, the same name of that novel published in 1898. Now all expedition to Titanic wreckage was suspended. Number 9. 121. Rest here. Fairview Lawn Cemetery in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. This cemetery is the final resting place for 121 Titanic victims, making it one of the largest Titanic cemeteries. Many of the victims buried there were not able to be identified, and their graves are marked with numbers rather than names. Number 10. Curse of the Mummy. This is an interesting story that the Titanic carried an Egyptian mummy named Amen-Ra, and its curse sank the ship. But it's not true. There are no records of a mummy transported on the ship, nor the records of a mummy of Amen-Ra. Number 11. Gender gap. Only 23 out of 908 crew members were females. Early 20th century maritime work was considered a predominantly male domain. Men were generally hired for positions like sailors, engineers and deckhands, while women were more commonly employed in service roles such as stewardesses or in housekeeping. Number 12. Money couldn't save him. John Jacob Astor IV was the richest passenger on Titanic, who had a net worth of $8.7 million when he died, equivalent of $3 billion today. He was on vacation with his pregnant wife and servants. Even though he was the richest, he didn't get a place in lifeboat due to women and children first policy. But he made sure his pregnant wife carried in lifeboat number 4. He stood on the deck of the ship as it began to sink. His body was recovered from the sea on 22 April by the crew of Mackay Bennett. He was buried in Trinity Cemetery, New York. Number 13. Treasure underwater. The Titanic, resting at a depth of approximately 2.4 miles, around $6 million belongings sank with Titanic on the day. More than 6,000 items recovered from Titanic. A violin recovered from Titanic was later sold on $1.6 million at auction. A pocket watch sold $98,000. A brandy flask at $67,000. But the most valuable item on Titanic was a painting by Mary Joseph Blondel Le Circassian Aubain. This notable work was succumbed to the water of mighty Atlantic Sea and never recovered. Number 14. Pet same destiny. There are 12 dogs on the board, only 3 survived. Number 15. It's not real. The Heart of the Ocean necklace from Titanic film is not real. It's fictional. Number 16. Overconfidence. On that night, the Titanic received 6 ice warnings from nearby ships, but the captain refused to slow down. Number 17. Old and young survivors. The oldest survivor of Titanic was John Svensson, who was 74 years old at the time of sinking. He was a Swedish passenger traveling in 3rd class. The youngest survivor of the Titanic was Malvina Dean, who was just 2 months old at the time of sinking. She was also the last remaining survivor of the Titanic when she passed away 2009. Number 18. Titanic on reels. When we think about Titanic, the first thing comes in our mind was the Titanic film by James Cameron. The interesting fact is the first Titanic movie came out just a month after the sinking. One of the Titanic survivor, Dorothy Gibson, a 22-year-old woman, acted in this film. even though the film was criticized for commercializing the disaster which killed 1,500 people. Unfortunately, all prints of this film destroyed in a studio fire. Number 19. Huge success. We all know that Titanic film directed by James Cameron was a huge success, and no doubt it was one of the best film ever made. But the interesting fact is not only the film, but its soundtrack and song My Heart Will Go On is also a huge success. It topped the charts in more than 25 countries, was the world's best-selling single in 1998. More than 18 million copies sold all over the world. Number 20. Read these books about Titanic. There are thousands of books published about Titanic in different languages. The first book was written by Alexander Belfilson Young, published in 1912, just only 37 days after the sinking. Here are the list of my favorites. A Night to Remember by Walter Lord. Titanic, an Illustrated History by Don Lynch Ken Marshall. Voyage of the Great Titanic by Ellen Emerson White. Titanic, The Long Night by Diane Ho. The Discovery of Titanic by Robert D. Ballard. Titanic remains a timeless symbol of both human achievement and tragedy. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the remarkable history of Titanic. Now we would like to hear from you. Which fact surprised you the most? Please comment.